Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Justice Malala. We are joined by Justice Malala, who's a political commentator and author. There's a lot of uncertainty globally. I mean, if you just see what's happening in the US, everyone is uncertain as to what's to come. And I'm curious to know how this is going to impact South Africa, especially when it comes to financial inclusion, financial payments, given all the uncertainty that we are seeing, not just in the US, but globally.
Yeah. I mean, I think the US is an interesting place because it's been the catalyst, particularly since the inauguration of President Donald Trump on January 20. You've seen a huge number of actions that he's taken against South Africa specifically, on the African continent and globally. So a key part of our future now will be the responses to that. If you think about China and its decision to say tariff-free trade for Africans, all African countries, except Eswatini, with China, essentially opening up as the US closes down. So for payments in South Africa, it's whether this will be a positive step or not. What does it mean that we're going to lose so much business with the United States? The fact that AGOA, which has enabled so much commerce between the United States and Africa, is essentially dead. So for payments in South Africa, it's whether the movements that are happening now constrict our economic growth, or whether they encourage more of it. But I think change is coming. I think that a westward-looking Africa is increasingly looking towards China. China is looking very powerfully and increasingly towards Africa and South Africa. And then there's Russia, then there's the emerging powers, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar is one of the biggest peacemakers on the continent now. So new relationships, new ways of doing business are going to open up. And that means the way we do payments, the way we do transactions, the way we pay each other, essentially in these new frontiers is going to be big business, and it's going to be different. We all have to be nimble in this time.
What about the impact of potential sanctions? I mean, the US has made that quite clear, and you also mentioned it earlier to say that there might be a possibility that certain individuals from the ANC could be sanctioned. How will that change things or impact things?
Well, I think you're entering in South Africa, we haven't had a situation where you have sanctions really before 1994. So you're becoming a bit of a Zimbabwe, where there were targeted sanctions against specific individuals. You're entering a terrain where you are like Russia, where there were specific targeted sanctions against oligarchs and some officials of the Putin administration. So, there will be some form of that. I think that the US is careful and wary about what you'd say are blanket sanctions, as many people, and some of the people that the US claims it wants to protect in South Africa will be the victims of those sanctions. So I don't see blanket sanctions on South Africa, but I think people who work in the payment industry will find themselves having to do the kind of bureaucratic work that has been done by others in times like the Ukraine war, Russia attacking Ukraine, and so forth and so forth. So I think this will be. I would say I veer towards that there will be sanctions on specific individuals, people who have dealt particularly around issues of Hamas, and so forth, and the ANC itself, I think that there will be some action there. But I don't think it will be blanket sanctions on South Africa.
What about policy certainty when it comes to ensuring that there is more financial inclusion in this country? And I'll give you an example of, we've had issues with grey listing, and that all stemmed from the fact that we didn't have our policies in order, and there were major challenges when it came to that. How important is it to have us off the grey list, policy certainty, with all these political parties in the GNU?
I mean, I think one of the things for me is it wasn't just that we didn't have the policy; it's that we were, in a very South African way, we were just lazy. We didn't do the things that we needed to do. We didn't put in the. We might have said, "Oh, we are all for making sure that there isn't illegal funding of banned organizations," but when it came to doing the work in terms of financial intelligence, we didn't put that in, and so the allegation could be made by anyone in the world, not just the United States, that, oh, you guys are funding terrorism and so forth, and we didn't seem to have the guardrails in place. So hopefully people like National Treasury are doing the work that will pull us back from where we nearly were and will be in the world's good books in that sense. But we need to continue doing the work, or else we will find ourselves retreating again and being one of those grey-listed countries.
What about South Africa's position, especially with BRICS, and how that is important in terms of positioning itself strategically to remain connected and not to be isolated? I think isolation mostly comes from the US, but
Yes.
in terms of South Africa's position when it comes to BRICS?
Well, South Africa needs to continue, in my view, it needs to make genuine its non-partisan. It stands that it's not going to be drawn into these geopolitical battles, and that it will push certain causes, of course, and that is its right as an independent country. But let me put it this way: I think that South Africa actually has a wonderful opportunity to continue relations and good relations with the United States, but it needs to dial back on some of its grandstanding on issues that it might not need to be an expert on. And by that I mean, why did South Africa have to go so hard on Russia, on support for Russia at the beginning of the Ukraine war, when it could see that an independent foreign sovereign country was being attacked? And so South Africa is at the moment trying to extricate itself from that corner that it painted itself into. And this was something that was totally unnecessary. It should have said, we as South Africa are not going to be a player in this. Ukraine is a friend of South Africa's. Russia is a friend of South Africa's. We'll encourage peace between them, but we're not going to take sides. But we took sides. And so there are some areas where we need to recognize that there is something called realpolitik. And realpolitik means that you sometimes say, my people will suffer because of this, so I'm not going to bang on about it. I'm going to find a way to resolve the issue without standing on a big stage and shouting at other people when it's absolutely not necessary.